Tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Good evening, everyone, and very happy to be here. I've heard of Sims for a long, long time, and it's a great opportunity to come up and join you, to come along with the Ayyas and the other monks who are involved in trying to begin Clear Mountain. So it's a nice occasion for, of course, say Sims has been here for a very long time. I'm not sure how long, many, many decades. But there is this nascent opportunity or beginning attempt to see if a monastic presence will be, well, see if it'll fly or not. It's I think that's one of the beauties of the Buddhist teaching, is that there's really many, many expressions, and to learn how to get the flavor of those expressions and see how they speak to you. Part of a monastic form is that there's a certain tradition that we follow, and there's been, to be able to plug into that tradition, and then to also, and I think one of the things that I particularly, of course, I'm a bit biased, but certainly part of what I find beautiful within the tradition is this opportunity to relate to a religious, spiritual tradition from a place of faith, maybe, in a culture and society that is so based on the material and the rational. I think it's refreshing to approach something from a place of trust and faith, and of course that's a quality that the Buddha lays out as a foundation in terms of the development of the spiritual faculties. Faith is the first one, and it puzzled me for the longest time, because one, I didn't see myself as somebody who had any faith, even though I was living as a monastic in a Buddhist monastery. Which is, there's all sorts of paradoxes that are part of this exploration and maturation, so that even, say, as Ayyā Santussikā, introducing the meditation, okay, sit up straight and relax. Which, I mean, we hear it so often that we don't sort of So, oh, hey, wait a minute, which one should I be doing? But you realize, well, actually, it requires both, because it's a bigger picture that we're relating to. And in the same way that, say, the Buddha's path, the Buddha, in terms of religious teachings, I mean, it's hard to find any religious teaching that is so rigorous in its application of wisdom and discernment, but also requires a certain faith to nurture it, because it can get really dry if one is trying to figure it all out through the intellect, or trying to apply it just through effort, and that sense of being able to how do we introduce the qualities of heart into the practice, into the training, and some of it is not so obvious, or I say, just like the before giving the Dhamma talk, there's a traditional request that Daniel made, and then okay, I've got an invitation to teach. I was probably going to teach anyway, but there's a beauty in some of the forms, and to reflect on the meaning of it, because there's a certain humility of requesting to receive teachings, and then for myself to begin the teachings is to pay respects to the Buddha and to Dhamma and Sangha, so that sense of it's not about me so much as I'm a representative of the Triple Gem, and to a certain degree, as Buddhists, we're all representatives of the Triple Gem, and how do we fulfill that for our own benefit? And this is something that comes up over and over and over again in the discourses and the teachings of the bringing a benefit to oneself, bringing benefit to others, bringing happiness to oneself, bringing happiness to others. It's not; these are not separate things, and they go hand in hand. They go together. So that recollection of grounding oneself in that respectful relationship to the traditional forms of refuge, because the reality is we take refuge in all sorts of things. Who doesn't take refuge in their first cup of coffee in the morning? There, or the mind going out for, they can be very innocent. They can be quite, not so, kind of destructive, or and we can take refuge in really beautiful things. So that learning how to exercise discernment, so that we're really nurturing the beautiful qualities of heart, and of how we live it, how we implement that. So the recollection of refuge is in the Thai language, when we recollect when they do a translation of the Buddha, it's taking refuge not in a historical Buddha, although that's implicit, but it's but it's in the qualities. And of course, those qualities are accessible to everyone. One who knows, one who's awakened, one who's radiant. These are beautiful qualities of the heart to inform or to direct our attention. The refuge of in Dhamma as a refuge in, not just in terms of teachings, but the fundamental truth, fundamental realities, the way things truly are. We have to accept the whole package and take it as a refuge and trust in when the Buddha points to the impermanence, change as a universal characteristic, a universal truth. You think, whoa, that's can I take refuge in that? But then you realize the more you trust in the fundamental nature and of this existence, the more comfortable we are with it, and the more comfortable we are with it, the more imperturbed we are. There's a that's on a discursive level, on a thought experiment level, but that imperturbability is also, that's it's a quality of samadhi, of meditation. One of the, that's one of the qualities that the Buddha points to of the meditative mind, the mind of a settled quality of mind, attained imperturbability, which is, I like that. It's so easy to be reacting to the things that we like, the things that we dislike, the things that we approve of, the things we disapprove of, but to be imperturbable within that change, or those disparities, is a function of refuge and a function of the training, as well as when we think of wisdom, it's not just information about the teachings. It's sort of how we live it, how we live a life of discernment and clarity, so that seeing things clearly. And the Buddha, just in describing, say, the basis of meditation, as everyone knows, this is a meditation center. It's mindfulness and cultivation of mindfulness. But there's different clusters of qualities that we have to bring together to fulfill the aspects of mindfulness that the Buddha points to. And the first is a certain effort. Say in the scriptural language, the Buddha whenever the Buddha talks of mindfulness, he talks of the Atapi Sambhajano Satima Vinaya Loke Apichato Marasa. Buddhist jargon, sorry, but it's sometimes it's helpful to have these reminders that the Buddha really did lead the way on describing the qualities of mind that are required, and so that mindfulness, that atapi, is a pointer to effort, is a pointing to effort, and Ajahn Jeff translates it as ardent. So there's and there's a little, it's not so cool. There's a little bit of fire there. There's a engaging with a, it's not just sort of stepping back and letting it all happen. It's, we have to engage. And the aspect of sampajanya, which is again, Ajahn Jeff translates it as alert. It's a traditional translation, it's clear comprehension. So that sense of clarity of, there's a reflective quality that it's not passive, or it's only passive when that is what is useful. That's what leads to clarity and well-being and imperturbability. And there's an engagement that is really helpful to be able to see clearly. Satima is to be possessed of mindfulness. There's this mindfulness, awareness, being aware, being very present. And then the last quality that the Buddha speaks of is that the relinquishing of greed and distress towards the world, not getting caught up in the liking and disliking that we have towards the world. And the world is not just out there, the world in here. Sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, all the mental formations. That's what the Buddha defines as the world. Is asked very, say, explicitly, the world, what is the world? And say, the eye is the world, the ear is the world, the nose, the tongue, the body, the mind is the world. However, or in another sense, that whereby one perceives the world and conceives of the world, that is the world. So that learning how to live in the world without being shaken and being imperturbable, that requires this quality of mindfulness, meditation, the developing of a refuge, having a continuity of and I think one of the, say, results of that is of course, is this imperturbability, but it's also clarity and well-being. It's really interesting. If you ask most people, well, what is the heart of the Buddha's teachings, and quite rightly, say it was the Four Noble Truths. Because even the Buddha himself, through 45 years of his dispensation, as over and over again, I teach only two things: suffering and the ending of suffering. So, and these Four Noble Truths: suffering, cause of suffering, cessation of suffering, path leading to the ending of suffering. And we can sometimes hear that and relate to it. I go, wow, it's a lot of suffering. But it's important to recognize that what the Buddha is doing is making sure that this is an experiential teaching as opposed to a philosophical abstraction. And what grabs our attention is suffering. And what makes us really sit up and take notice is when it hurts. But of course, that's not the whole picture. Of course, it's understanding the cause. It's being able to realize the cessation, the ending of suffering. But then like when we turn to the the middle way of practice that the Buddha laid down for the ending of suffering, you think that each of those factors, its direct result is happiness and well-being. It's just its natural. That's its natural point of completion. The right view, right thought. These are all the thoughts of and the perspectives that are bringing about happiness and well-being. This is its natural conclusion. The aspects of action and speech, and that are part of the path. The Buddha say, when we have this, say, living with virtue and integrity, the natural result is happiness in within ourselves, as well as a sense of, in terms of relationship to others, a tremendous sense of trust. And from my own experience, I've lived in a monastery. This will be my 50th year in the monastery, and I don't actually like everybody I live with, but I do trust them, and that's because they're committed to sila, they're committed to virtue, they're committed to living with integrity, and that's really, really important. There's a sense of well-being that is beyond personal likes and dislikes, and yeah, not everybody likes me either, which is fine. But just living in this with a life of integrity it just brings a lot of happiness to the heart. It's what we're hardwired for that. So it's paying attention to it, and similarly, in the same sense of the development of the meditation aspects of of the path, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, right meditation. Especially when one hears right effort, it's so often, from our perspective, and I think most people's perspective, in order to put forth effort, I've got to do something. And then when we do something, we've got to, we're measuring, how diligent am I? How much did I do? But in the Buddha's description of right effort, he's not saying how much did you do or how vigorous were you. He's saying, what's the result? Did it bring about an increase in wholesome qualities? Did it stabilize any wholesome qualities that you had? And did it lead to the relinquishing of unwholesome qualities? Did it prevent any unwholesome qualities from arising? It's all concerned with the quality of our heart, and that well-being. And because within wholesome qualities and unwholesome qualities, intrinsic to the, say, unwholesome, unskillful states, there's suffering, there's a lack of clarity, there's an agitation that's intrinsic. And similarly with wholesome qualities within the Buddhist framework of mind, it's peaceful, it's clear, it's steady. And that's so that inclination, encouraging of the wholesome in terms of effort, but then okay, with mindfulness, then you're starting to stabilize that, starting to recognize it more clearly, understanding what were the causes and conditions that brought it about, what are the causes and conditions that that make it go wonky, and being able to be aware and alert enough to see that more clearly, and the aspects of say of samadhi, of it's stabilizing it to another sort of degree, another level, refining that stability of mind, of heart, so that it is, it's steady, it's clear. And there's a few different, there's a bunch of words that the Buddha uses to describe the heart of samadhi, which I can't remember all of them. But the what sticks in my mind is the one is this quality of malleable and soft. This muttu buddha. There's a softness there, and so that it's there's a malleable, soft. It's not rigid, because sometimes we can concentrate our mind, but then it's rigid, or it's fearful. And a soft, malleable quality of mind is it's bright, it's happy, and because it's not easily threatened. The quality of what is called pliable, workable, ready for work. Like we prepare the mind not to sink into dullness, no, for sure not, but to sink into just a self-oriented, well, what comes to mind is a little precious, peaceful state of mind that we can hang on to, which sometimes we'd like, for sure, but the purpose of this mindfulness and this clarity is the work of liberation, the work of freedom, the work of letting go, the work of relinquishment. And that's, of course, that brings about even more happiness and well-being, just not hanging on to, holding on to our identity of self, our preferences and opinions, our attachments to how the world should be or shouldn't be, all of the ways that we trip ourselves up. And there's just a tremendous sense of happiness and well-being that comes. There's a freedom there. And so that the mind of steadiness and composure is for that purpose, for put it to work, the work of Dhamma. There's another word that the Buddha uses, which is like steady, and ditta, which means like steady, solid, stable. And so that's a it's a beautiful quality. There's a sense of well-being and confidence that comes from that. And then the last one that I've already mentioned is this attain to imperturbability, which is a that kind of resonates with me. And because it was one of the qualities that I saw in my teacher Ajahn Chah, who was he was a very charismatic, very very energetic teacher. He had people were drawn to him. So the monastery routine was never really that fixed. The people coming and going were always, there was always something happening. But he was like the still center within that, not because he was forcing it or holding it or imposing his will on it, but because he was happy and still within whatever was happening, and understanding, oh, this is just one of the idioms that he used to use. And when people get upset or get excited about something, and you say, it's just that much. It's just in Thai, it's only that much. And that's all anything ever can be. It's just that much. For all of the kind of the joys and sorrows that we have, all of the successes and the failures that we have, in the end, it's just that much. Right? It's just to be able to be, you see it clear. It's not dismissive. It's not pushing it away, but it's just within that one is clear and one can experience happiness, well-being. And that's real what peace is. Well, that's a perspective. So I'll offer that for reflection this evening.
Thank you, Luang Por, Ayyā. We have a chance now for Q&A. And I really would encourage people to take advantage. It's very rare to have teachers like this here with us. And if you're shy or on the verge of asking something, please know that there's likely others who have the same question, and it's a gift to be able to come forward and ask it. I don't know if people will just say their questions and then we can repeat it up here. Is that how it's usually done at Seattle Insight? Okay. We could have one for the questioners to come up and take. Okay. So yeah, we'll have one mic waiting, and then if you're on Zoom or something, perhaps there's the ability to raise your electronic hand if you have questions, yeah, or type it into the chat. And although all monastics are available for the questions, I think we'll probably foreground the senior monastics we have here with us, because it's really rare. So please don't be shy. Thank you.
Amanda, thank you for being here, everyone. I guess my question, you mentioned faith, and I'm curious if faith feels out of balance. Sometimes it feels like faith is strong, but wisdom maybe not as strong. And I'm curious if you could say anything about that.
Well, I mean, that's even traditionally the Buddha, like in his, when I mentioned those spiritual faculties, and in the structure of it, there's these 5 spiritual faculties: faith, effort, mindfulness, Samādhi, Paññā, so that the faith and the wisdom aspects are need to be balanced, and they will get out of balance. It's just quite natural. And then the effort, energy, concentration, meditation aspects, the peaceful, calming, composed element, that can get out of balance similarly. So that, and that middle factor of mindfulness is just so important that it needs to be monitoring or adjusting or attuning itself to the different faculties. And again, the clue is always suffering. So that this is when we're willing to use suffering as a tool for learning, as opposed to an indication of our complete hopelessness. Okay.
Well, good evening. It's such a delight to hear you here. With gratitude to Ajahn Nisabo, I've been listening to Ajahn Amaro's presentation of Analayo Bhikkhu's book on the Satipatthana. And it's been just absolutely fascinating to listen to. However, the darndest thing has been happening in the middle of the chapter on the hindrances. He'll get to the end of the 3rd hindrance, and then the book simply disappears from my screen. And so I'm wondering if you could speak to the 4th and 5th hindrances, the agitation and doubt. And I believe Ajahn Sona also refers to the hindrance of agitation with respect to also a quality of compulsion, which certainly resonates with my mind, but I'm not quite sure how. So.
First of all, what's your name? Charles. Thank you for the question. I'm going to give it a go. Luang Por Pasanno has been my teacher now. This year, it's 20 years since I took dependence on Luang Por, and he's been the most amazing. What did you say about Ajahn Chah? You know, that stability, that rock. Thank you, Luang Por. Imperturbable. So I will try to answer this question with my teacher sitting right here. Yeah, so compulsion, restlessness, even a kind of unproductive regret or remorse. That's that 4th hindrance. The mind is on the move, and it's actually kind of the flip side of the sloth and torpor or drowsiness. So sometimes that's a result of overstimulation. It can be the result of maybe some doubt about our own virtue, or some things that, you know, we may want to clean up in our thoughts, our words, and our actions. And so I feel like I get the best results working with the hindrances, would I bring a sense of kindness and compassion to myself? Appreciating that we all have a lot to deal with, really, our mental habits and our life situation. And then you noticing that it's there instead of going, oh, here you are again. That's me. That's my, no, to be kind and it's like, okay, this is what I'm faced with at the moment. And then, really looking at in the present moment, if I really bring that stabilizing quality of mindfulness to it, stay present with, maybe look into a bit what's behind it, if there's some cause for this restlessness, cause for this compulsion. As Luang Por said, you feel the suffering in it. And sometimes it's enough to just kind of see it in the full light of your awareness for it to settle down. And if it becomes, if that becomes kind of a theme, then it can be really valuable to look at, what am I doing in my life? Maybe taking care of any, weak areas of our sila, our moral virtue, because that really is such a foundation of even, like the Buddha talked about, if you have virtue, then it's natural to not have regret. And when you don't have regret, it's natural to have joy. And these causes just keep falling forward, you might say, to a calm mind. So we can look at that kind of like collection of things and see, where that might be fueled in our day-to-day life. So I was teaching a beginning meditation class one time. And, people were being encouraged to meditate every day. And, one of the classes, maybe 3 or 4 weeks into it, this person says, yeah, I just can't get quiet. And then we start talking about what's going on. They would come home from work, watch the news, and then sit. Oh, okay. So, just, it might not be that obvious, but, really looking at what are we doing that helps to calm the mind as we're just taking care of things. What are we doing that brings up more agitation in the mind? So that's, kind of what I would say. Of course, there's a whole bunch more to say. Books are written. And the doubt, is that wavering. Am I doing this right, etc.? That kind of speculative doubt, or this, like, is this, am I able to do this at all, or am I doing it correctly, or am, maybe doubt about some of what the Buddha describes as the true nature of reality that we haven't seen yet ourselves. And again, okay, identifying this is doubt. And then recognizing that if there's something we haven't come to a conclusion about yet, we're talking about faith, and faith isn't quite the same in Buddhism as it is in a faith-based religion. It's really not about believing in, at least fundamentally, not about believing in something you can't prove. Faith is a confidence that you develop in the Buddha, in the Dhamma, and the Sangha, based on, I think, more than anything, your experience of the Buddha and the Dhamma and the Sangha. You can really build that faith kind of brick by brick to be a real confidence. So when we experience a lot of doubt in our meditation, one way to work with it is where does my confidence stand with regard to the Buddha Dhamma Sangha, with regard to my own sort of decisions about how I'm living my life. And when we have the more clarity we develop based on learning from, our mistakes, like Luang Por Pasanno is saying, we can always use all of this as a way to learn. The more we learn, the more sort of solid we become, the less that doubt is going to show up in our meditation.
Steve, whoops, my name's Steve. You referred to the word malleable in terms of a condition of mind that evolves out of practice, and suggested that sometimes too much emphasis on concentration can restrict that. And then on the other hand, in the suttas, Buddha talks about malleable often in terms of being at the point of nibbana. The Buddha talks about, malleable mind then, but then he also emphasizes the jhanas a lot. And, some of us have sort of jhanas envy that maybe can't get there so easy. So could you tease out how those interrelate, the malleable on the one side, but maybe concentration focus held in the wrong way can restrict that which makes that possible? Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the things is just the word concentration. To me is I think it's a terrible translation for samadhi. Just because in the English language literally means to make small, and that's not what the composure and brightness of mind or heart that is the result of meditation. There's an expansive quality, which is certainly an aspect of the meditation, but it's also an aspect of quite more explicitly in this, like with the Brahma Viharas, which are a really important doorway into the jhanas. And one of the qualities, like when there's a chant, or what comes up in the discourses over and over again, where the Buddha describing the cultivation of the Brahma Viharas, abundant, exalted, immeasurable. It's the quality of the mind of the Brahma Viharas, but I say the Brahma Viharas are a really important doorway into the jhanas, like using mindfulness of breathing with a flavor of loving kindness is a great way to settle the heart and to allow the mind to settle. Also, again, concentration can be, you're concentrating the mind, focusing the mind, and even the word that is usually used, one-pointed. It's sort of, okay, I got to keep my mind on one point and not let it wander. And that can be a really tight point, and not really a happy place. It might be held there, but it's usually through through a lot of exercise of will and effort. Whereas the same word that's translated as one-pointed is also well translated as unified. And so unification of mind. So it's unifying different factors. When you say, like, when you what are the characteristics of the first jhana? Vitaka, vichara, piti, sukha, ekakata. The initial thought, directed thought, evaluation. The mind is evaluating, it's sustaining that thought. And then there's piti, joy, happiness, and unification. So that these are not opposed to each other, they're working together. So that these different qualities, different factors are able to harmonize and to unify and to bring about a sense of clarity and stability, so that your doorway into the jhanas, or it's not just a concentration exercise. And I think that that's something that can, I mean, I find when I've certainly that, and one of the, certainly my own experience of me trying to get the jhanas, the kind of the paradigm is, when I get my meditation together, then I'm going to be happy. But that's not the Buddha's paradigm. The Buddha is saying, when you get your happiness together, then your meditation goes right. And so that there's a in the discourses, there's descriptions of the path and descriptions of development, and there's a set of stock phrases, qualities that come up over and over again, many places, and then there's different entry points to them, so that, say, confidence, saddha, confidence, faith is one. Reflection and investigation is another. Sila, virtue, is another. And so there's these different disparate entry points, but then it goes into with such and such as the condition. Then there's the arising of joy. With the arising of joy, then with the condition of joy, then there's the arising of, well, actually I got that right. There's more delight. Pamoja is your first quality, and then from delight, then there's joy. Then from joy, there's tranquility. From tranquility, then there's happiness. And then from happiness, then there's the arising of samadhi. And in some of those discourses, the Buddha actually stops and reiterates. So it becomes very expressive. The happy mind is easily concentrated, easily settled. And then from that, the state of, say, of samadhi, then there's seeing clearly. And from seeing clearly, there's dispassion, there's relinquishment, there's letting, there's release. So that this is you're setting the conditions for mind, but happiness forms a really important part of this development of mind, so that the cultivation of, say, of meditation and the development of more refined states of meditation is not just a concentration exercise. It's a cultivation and setting the conditions of mind so that it's actually comfortable and expansive.
In terms of the word malleable, yeah, how does that fit? Because I understood that when there's malleability can happen, then mindfulness can happen, arises. Without it, it can't, or something like that.
Well, I mean, in the sense of malleable, it's again, there's sometimes the clusters of qualities are mutually supportive in when the Buddha is describing something. Sometimes it's mutually supportive, sometimes they're synonymous. In this case, I think it's like mutually supportive, so that the quality of malleability is the word muttu literally means soft, doesn't it? So that, yeah, this is not a hard-edged driving of the mind to samadhi. There's a softness that is required, and that, of course, any quality of the Buddha's teaching and practice and implementation has to rely on mindfulness. There has to be clarity. There's no development, there's no progress in any aspect, whether it's precepts or whether it's the cultivation of generosity and kindness. And that mindfulness is a fundamental quality of mind to be able to allow clarity to establish itself.
Good evening. Thank you, Ajahn and Ayya's. I received the island yesterday in the mail, and I'm delighted. I'm tickled, Ajahn Luang Por, to see you. And I have a question. Actually, I hope you will delight us in some teachings that Ajahn Chah offered in relationship to awareness practice, because I read a very delightful story about Ajahn Chah's realization or his experience of noticing that sense objects were occurring in different parts of the mind than awareness. And he was sitting with a lot of ease and relaxation. There was village music going on, and yet he was in this very calm state to be able to see the mind. The awareness was separate from the sense objects that were coming in. And I was interested if he and you would share stories of some of his teachings around awareness practice and how it can help bring that quality of imperturbability. He used the word, I think, in being indifferent from all external phenomena. I'm looking at the book. So I would thank you again for the anthology, and I would love to hear anything more on the topic.
You have to get ready to change. Just before I said to Ayyā Santussikā, okay, we'll just tag team. And then, of course, and then it comes immediately a question directed specifically to me. So, and yeah, I'm glad to hear that you got the island. I don't know where you got it in the mail. Where do you actually live?
I do live in Seattle, but
Okay.
unfortunately, or fortunately for me, someone sold it on Amazon, and I know it's not supposed to be for sale, but I got it.
There we are.
Apologies if I need to say that.
Okay. Yeah, whether we like it or not, we're plugged in. Yeah. Well, I think one of the things is to come back to the what that story illustrates of Ajahn Chah, and the sense that there's a fundamental difference between the mind and the objects of mind, and that's and the objects of mind are endless, but there is this fundamental quality of knowing and awareness that is foundational to our experience of the mind, experience of life, of just being alive. And so it is the ground that our peace, well-being, happiness, and clarity can be settled in. And it's something that Ajahn Chah was introduced to by his teacher Ajahn Mun, and that's something, and it's a teaching that is quite say widespread in the Thai forest tradition, of that perspective, that we can be living in a way that we can see and recognize and be engaged with the objects of mind, or we can our being can be grounded in the quality of heart, of knowing, of awareness, of stillness, of just a fundamental clarity. It's there it's always there. It wasn't ever there. We get entangled in the objects of mind. Another idiom that Ajahn Chah used in a similar way, and it's what say Ajahn Jayasaro chose to use as the title of Ajahn Chah's biography, Stillness Flowing, and as a description of mind, in the sense that with our experience and the nature of mind is that there is this opportunity to access stillness, and it's flowing, and it's moving, and it's shifting, and it's flowing, and it's shifting, and it's changing, and it's still. And there's stillness there. So that there's, again, this sense of, we our mind, the human mind in general, Americans tend to do it better than most. Everything needs to be black and white, right and wrong, good and bad, and everything gets bifurcated and in opposition to each other. But in, say, like this quality of stillness flowing, of peace within movement, movement within peace, the integration and harmonizing of these qualities is really a foundation for our both our conceiving of, say, the goal, and then how we try to live our practice. So I hope that's useful.
I'm Daniel, and I want to ask about the sense of tenacity and or resolve that comes about from a sense of desperation, of being in the predicament that we've put ourselves in, or that I've put myself in anyway. And I often feel that I no longer have a choice but to practice. And this sense of resolve can drag me out of despair, but it also has an aggressive quality to it, and that's not quite right. And I'm wondering what I can do to address that, because I certainly don't want to not bring up that sense of resolve when I am despairing, when I am wanting to give up. But the aggression is not right effort. If you could speak to that, please.
So we want to look at the nature of aggression, anger, how it can feel powerful and yet is so destructive. So I'm very appreciative of your delineation of these, kind of mental states or aspects of your experience. And I think, of course, we want to feed or nurture our resolve and recognize it as an incredible support, strength. And I think it becomes nurtured by development of wisdom. And when we're developing wisdom and we're seeing more clearly like what to do in our life, so what's wholesome, what's not wholesome, how to really take the next step in the right direction virtuously, that helps a lot in relieving the desperation. And to begin to really see this determination, first of all, maybe a shift from desperation to samvega, an urgency, a sense of urgency to awaken, to really practice, because all of us, no matter what our situation is, we're in this real mess of life in this constantly changing world that's threatening from every direction, really, and a lack of stability and satisfaction when we try to rely on the world. So that reliability, like Luang Por Pasanno's been saying, comes from inside. And then the more we can shift that desperation by reflecting on, okay, I'm keeping precepts, I'm developing kindness, generosity, I'm developing my confidence in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, that faith. I'm really like, there are many good qualities here, even though this feels desperate at the moment. I can look at that, really pay attention to your good qualities, remind yourself of them, This is kind of what the Buddha did before he was enlightened in that sutta on fear and dread, number 4 in the Majjhima Nikaya, where someone comes and talks to him about how scary it is to meditate in the jungle, in the forest, and how doesn't a person lose their mind, being out there by themselves. And I mean that, and then the Buddha said, yeah, I know that feeling because I've had that feeling where, like a peacock breaks a branch of the tree and all, afraid. But he said that, he would reflect. Do you know this sutta, Daniel, by any chance? It's a good read, I think. And he would reflect, well, someone who's, breaking the basic precepts would be afraid, but I don't have any reason to be afraid because I'm keeping the precepts. Or someone who lacks wisdom, lacks understanding of what's wholesome and unwholesome, and following, doing as much as possible towards the wholesome, they might be afraid, but I don't need to be afraid because I have that wisdom. And he would go through his qualities like that and really remind himself. He doesn't have to really take on the fear, the dread, the desperation, but instead, reflecting like that, being kind and compassionate to ourselves, being really reminding ourselves of our good qualities, we can then, use that as a springboard that helps us to, like, okay, I can keep going. I can really gain, make and develop the path, and every step of the way. What I've seen so far is that it really helps. It helps me feel stronger and more solid. And really, as we develop those qualities, we gain that confidence. And of course, anytime something can just come out of left field and kind of knock us off our pins, and then we need to okay, looking at those good qualities again, and also talking to spiritual friends, having a teacher can help enormously as we work with whatever comes up. I mean, there's so many times I'd be wrapped around the axle over something. I'd go to see Ayyā Santussikā, and I swear within 10 minutes, I am like chill and going in the right direction. I cannot encourage you too much to find, people like this in your life, and remember that the sense of urgency is positive. That idea of balance is important. Remember that aggression is toxic. It's a defilement. When we kind of tip over into that, wanting to any kind of harm, that when that motivation comes from anger or something like that, to recognize, okay, this is important to contain. Like I said, I'm really glad that you have so much awareness of it, because when it comes up, then your mindfulness will help you see, oh, this is what's happening now. What I need to do is really go to the body. Where is that showing up in the body? And not feed it with thoughts, but really feel it in the body and let it play out in the body. And then, it doesn't have the same power the next time around, usually. And you can really learn to master that. It's really seeing where does it kind of tip into that side of things. And then, really putting the effort and the energy into okay, I'm gonna, I want to do this with my practice, maybe more of a love for the practice too, to come up, an appreciation. Okay, looking back from before you started practicing and seeing, what's changed in your life. and really encouraging yourself.